Minister, we have the country's councillors reflecting on what needs to be done, but also taking stock. What for you should top the list of their priorities?
The first one is a level of consciousness of those who are local government leaders, that they are there to serve our people, and that our people's discontent is based on realistically their sense of the inadequacy of the services, which quite often is a result of poor communication sometimes. Now, what I would like to see is a change in attitude, a consciousness of the local government practitioners, councillors, leaders, mayors, that their attitude towards the communities has to change. It has to be a relationship where they must feel more concerned if people are uncomfortable or if they're dissatisfied. It must be a kind of show from the councillors that they are always ready to respond if there are any causes of unhappiness in the community. And sometimes my concern is that it looks like sometimes like people fear each other. They fear the groupings inside the council. They fear, being seen as bad when they've actually got to stand up for the community. And so the first thing for me is the community must come first. And in the results of the various protest analysis, two things stand out and give about 40% of the causes. One is a perception or a reality of corruption. Two is the attitude towards the councillor. Those two are a big block that people must be aware. The community must feel that they are being taken seriously. That's the first issue for me.
Can we still say, though, that... Are we still saying there's no corruption, these are merely perceptions?
I'm only discussing corruption, perceptions of corruption in relation to when people protest. It can be very wide. It could be reality, it could be perception. That corruption exists is not something that's beyond denial at this point. It's something that we need to be, very firm to say it has to be uprooted, and that leadership must lead from the front. The higher leaders must be the ones who exact discipline and ensure that there's consequence management and accountability for those who fail to comply with the rules, for those who do wrong, and where there's clear transgression and abuse of funds or dereliction of duty, there has to be strong action there. So the question of corruption and maladministration are things that do exist, and they have to be faced just like that.
Well, the Auditor General has recently been given more powers, but as he himself has pointed out, he can only do much. You as members of the executive, as well as members of the legislature, parliament, also have to play your respective parts.
The Auditor General is correct. It will help when the Auditor General has got augmented powers to be able to respond, but it does not mean that some of the issues go wrong and will only need the Auditor General to find out. We've got municipal public accounting account committees, MPECs. They are the ones who are watchdogs on a day-to-day basis. They must be the first one to sound the alarm. The normal procurement and finance regulations are supervised by the CFOs, the municipal managers and councillors. Those should be the first ones that indicate that things are wrong. You don't have to wait for the audit outcome. When the audit outcome comes, it's very late. And of course, as you go further, the MECs must be able to respond when they find something wrong and institute investigation. Similarly with the ministers have to do the same. But we need to go beyond that. Even political parties, there are instances where all you need is to get the political party to crack a whip and tell their members to behave themselves and to stop certain things that they do. And it's got to go like that. And it is all part of the system. And so as far as I would be concerned, the call is for everybody to do their bit to ensure that we can stop maladministration and corruption.
But what about your party, the ANC? Is it doing, or does it have what it takes to do what it is supposed to do?
I think the African National Congress has taken a number of steps, but also I believe that there's still a lot more that needs to be done. And I think the other parties have also done whatever they could. It's a matter of us having to emphasize and keep ensuring that whenever there's something that has gone wrong, somebody must take, the consequences thereof, and it has to be that it's not limited to someone, only because they are in a particular position. Even ordinary staff members, they've got a right to stand up and say, as whistleblowers, there is something wrong here, please investigate this one. And we have actually got, in this case, a number of instances where people have sent us anonymous complaints where they don't give us their names. We treat them as whistleblowers and say, investigate 1, 2, 3 in that municipality. And so I think we must also say, even communities, they have to take a stand. At the end of the day, we need a strong movement against maladministration and corruption that basically says the whole community and its leadership are on one side on this matter. So the people must not fear those who do wrong. People who do wrong must fear society. That society will not accept the wrongdoing. So I would say there's a lot to be done by all parties. The African National Congress has got a lot to do, particularly because most of its of the municipalities are under its care. As a party, as an organization, there's a lot of disciplinary work that needs to be done there. But the others, DA, EFF, and so on, because when we walk around, we find that people behave in a particular way. As long as it's unacceptable, we must expect there must be a response from everybody who has got the authority. Well, there have been a number of instances where even procurement meetings were disrupted by people who came from outside the municipal staff, and they walk in and demand information and disrupt certain proceedings. And that, we say, is completely unacceptable. There's been instances where a properly awarded tender has been issued to a particular contractor, and then people walk in there and want to take over without being given authority to do that. Now, when my point is, when I said people must not be loyal to their interests, there are people who will collude with wrongdoing simply because they are party to it and they've got something to benefit, rather than having a conscience that says to them that, but this is not what I was elected for. They must have a conscience that says, but what will people say when we have misused this money instead of it being channeled to the services that it's supposed to be doing? In some instances, people, because there are groupings inside, people will then tend to want to appear good to their own group, and therefore they don't raise issues where they can see things are not right, but then they can see that things are not right, but they are actually colluding or they are quiet about it. And all we're saying is that people must stand up and say when things are going wrong, because I've said also to some of the officials, I addressed the municipal managers and I said to them, there will be no excuse accepted for wrongdoing. No one can turn around and say, I was given an instruction by the mayor or a political leader and so on. So when there is a wrong instruction, then you shouldn't carry it through. But if you feel you are obliged to do that, there's a way in law of how you deal with that. You have to actually ask the person to give you the instruction in writing, which means that when that happens, the responsibility for the wrong goes to the one who's issued the instruction and not to the one who's implementing the instruction. And they've got to use that because the laws are able to protect staff who are keeping to constitutional and legal instructions.
municipal debt. Municipalities owe Eskom billions of rands, and as things stand, there doesn't seem to be any movement in ensuring that Eskom gets that money, or whether in fact municipalities will ever settle their debts with Eskom.
No, there's actually a huge movement at this point. You remember what happened at the beginning. There was a disagreement between the municipalities and Eskom. There was a point wherein there was a contest as to whose role is it to reticulate electricity, and there was even a point, I think 2017, that an agreement that they will actually go and sort it out in a declaratory order in court. And then the Presidential Coordinating Committee said no two government entities can take each other to court, so you go sort it out. Then I came in to be part of the interministerial task team. Over the past 8 months, we have actually pulled everyone through until we hammered a set of principles of resolving this issue, which the cabinet has endorsed. And on top of those, the cabinet has therefore demanded that an implementation plan must be developed, which must be tabled to the first cabinet meeting in February, and so that's going to be coming. The principles are actually quite telling and very, very important. In the first instance, the issue of the issue of the debt, we all agree that all municipalities must pay what is due by them to the municipalities, but we agree that we have to consider a different mode of collection, which over the years conventional collection has caused a problem, and so we now are saying let's get an implementation for a prepaid system which improves collections. Secondly, we need to look at third-party collector agencies that can assist so that municipality doesn't take money and keep it for himself, but there must be an easy way to split this up. And so there's work to be done on that, and there's a lot of work to be done. You know, the vetting of who can do that, what kind of agencies are possible to do that, how do we make sure that we don't blow up the cost for the municipalities and all of that. Then we talk about an approach to dealing with defaulters. And in dealing with defaulters, it effectively means we have to take people back to the issue of accountability. At a certain point, somebody must be held accountable or disciplined in their position if there is a ballooning debt and they've left responsibility of collecting, and they allowed the system to deteriorate and so on.
Prepaid, third-party payments, but what about those municipalities that simply cannot afford?
No, that if I can just finish them so that you'll understand the rest. So on all of these instances, we have also got to work on fixing the municipalities so that we can be able to determine the ones that have got a potential for raising revenue and those that do not have that potential. Those that have got a revenue potential must be able to deal with their debts. Then government can deal only in instances where there are non-viable municipalities. Take an example here where there are no industries, there are only villages, small towns, or very poor people, all of whom are under the indigency register. Those, it means that government has to actually stand up and assist those at that kind of level. So we have to now start saying also, beyond that point, how do you improve the economy of the non-viable or the municipalities that seem to be unable to run simply because they've got a very poor rate base.